is Real Life with Susan Harf. Hi everyone, I'm Rose Martin, and thank you for joining me as we get tips and advice for how we might live our very best life. Let's see what's on her mind. Hi Susan.
Hi there, Rose. Today we are talking about the 7-year itch, which is what some people call it. What do you think of when you hear the word 7-year itch?
Well, either in work or family, it's like that time where I'm just unsettled. I don't know what to do. I'm not really happy, but I'm not really unhappy, but I need something to give me a boost or something to reinvigorate my spirits. That's what I think of.
So Rose doesn't know this, but I'm going to give her a secret now.
Okay.
This is a secret. The 7-year itch in relationships has to do more with what happened before than when you get to that point that you just described. Yes. And the other secret I'm going to tell you is dating back to when you first begin the relationship and how that impacts the 7-year itch. Okay?
Okay.
So in order to understand what happens when you start to get restless, we need to understand the beginning. And so here's the secret. People tell me all the time when they meet somebody new who really interests them, they say, "You won't believe it. I met somebody that I feel like I've known all my life. I can't wait to get to know him better or her better because I think this is the one." And as they get to know that person better, they do find out that they feel like they've known them all their lives. And people think that's some kind of enigma, like they're the only ones that ever happened to, and oh my, I can't believe I met this person. He fulfills every wish I ever had. And mainly, I feel like when I'm with him, I'm like sitting in front of the TV on an old couch, just feeling really comfortable. Well, the secret is, you're not falling for this person because you love the color of their eyes and you love the smell of their hair. You are falling for them, believe it or not, because the reason you feel like you've known them all your life is you have. That's the secret. You have. Because the person you feel the most comfortable with and the person you are going to gravitate to as your life partner not only reminds you of people you've known before, but they remind you of the people who were your most significant teachers. So if you are a gentleman, if you're a man, your most significant teacher as a male was your father. If you are a woman, similarly, your most significant teacher was your mother. That does not have anything to do with whether you got along well, whether you didn't get along well. They were your most significant teacher.
You know, so my husband having characteristics like my mom is really right. My husband having characteristics like my dad, or even with the mates that the people choose, I didn't really realize that we go for characteristics of the familiarity of people who were already in our lives.
Yes. Yes. And what you just brought up is a very good point, which is, although your mother was your most significant teacher for women in your life, sometimes we partner with people who remind us more of the opposite sex parent. But the point here is that we do feel like we've known this new person all your life because they do remind you of your family of origin. Now, having said that, here's another secret. And this,
I'm all about the secrets.
And
I'm all about the secrets.
Me too. I love secrets. Me too. And this is the crazy part. The reason we partner for longevity, i.e. the reason we get married to this person or this is our significant other for life, is because they not only remind you of your family of origin and your parents, but moreover, they are going to provide the arena for you to act out, continue to act out, meaning deal with the issues that you faced in your family of origin.
Ooh.
Nobody thinks about that.
No.
Nobody knows about that.
Wow.
But that is the truth. And now people who go for coaching find out about that, and people who might have a therapist find out about that. But what's interesting is we pick people specifically, not for their hair color, not for their body, not for even how they come across sometimes. We pick them because they remind us of the issues that we faced in our family of origin, and now this is the person that's going to help us continue to act them out, because we're not done. When we leave our family of origin, when we grow up, we may go off to college, we may go take a job, we still are not done handling and being impacted by the issues that occurred in our family growing up.
You know, I never really thought about that as having so much of a longitudinal effect, right? You think when you're a child and it's all done, and then you go off and you have the next segment of your life and you live it. So I've never really put the pieces together like that before. Well, what do you think about, you know, people who come from same backgrounds or different backgrounds or same value systems or different value systems? Are we necessarily attracted to that as a mate, or do opposites truly attract?
In some ways, opposites do attract, and similarity attracts. But the important point for our discussion here relative to the 7-year itch and how it impacts you, how your marriage impacts you, is that we need to find a way to handle the issues that we had in our family of origin with our spouse, because that's why we pick them, on the basis of that. In addition to opposites attract, in addition to, well, I'm an introvert and you're an extrovert, and so when we entertain, I need you with me because you feel more comfortable hosting than I do, or when I'm somebody who doesn't know how to pick out a suit and you do, I need you with me so you can help me pick out the suit. Those are sort of superficial opposites attract, or in some ways we both like seafood, so how do you like that? We're alike. Those are more superficial aspects to our relationship, but the significant piece of why we choose each other is we've chosen each other to duke it out. How do you like that?
Yeah, wow. So then what are the tips and what are the strategies? What do we do?
Well, what we do at first is we accommodate. We say, oh, they're not really like my parents in the bad ways. Things that I didn't like about my family growing up, he or she is not like that. But what happens is sometimes that is masked. So I'm going to give you an example. I had a client who said, okay, Susan, I've heard your speech about this, and not true with me. And I said, how so? And she said, well, my father left the family when I was a child. I didn't even know my father. I was 5 years old, he left the family. So he abandoned my mother and he abandoned us. Okay. My husband's the opposite, she said. My husband does everything for our family. He only wants to be with us. He loves our children. He loves me. He's such a supportive person.
Stability, after stability.
Stability, exactly. She was after stability. However, I said, so you came to talk to me because you're having anxiety right now, and you have anxiety in your marriage. Why is that? And she said, I don't know, because he's so wonderful. And I said, tell me about how wonderful he is. And she did. And she said, the only thing I don't love is when he goes away on his trips. I said, what trips? She said, well, because he's so successful and because he takes care of us and because it's very important to him, he has to travel for his job. But let me tell you how great he is. I said, let's go back a minute. He travels for his job. How often? Well, he's gone Monday through Friday. Really?
Wow.
So I said, so as we were talking, she started to tear up. And I said, what about this is bothering you right now? He's a wonderful father. He's a wonderful provider. He's a wonderful husband. You are madly in love with him, and he's nothing like your father. Nothing. And she said, well, I'm sad right now because I'm talking about how he's gone so much. And I said, and you know what? Your voice is getting a little more shrill as you're telling me about him. And she said, I'm mad that he's not there all the time. And I said to her, actually, I didn't say it to her right then because I knew she wouldn't believe me. I waited about 10 seconds, maybe more. I then said, it sounds to me like that sort of abandonment that you talk about from your father, you kind of feel a little bit like that when your wonderful husband goes away. And she agreed that that she did. What's interesting about what happens in our ego, our gut, is that our ego does not, the ego doesn't make a difference in our mind between, doesn't delineate between, did this happen now? Did it happen 20 years ago? And why did it happen? It doesn't matter why it happened.
Really? There's no sense of time.
There's no sense of time, and there's no sense of reason. So we can feel abandoned and have it not make intellectual sense to us. Or in this client's case, she said, he's not all like my father. But in her gut, he was. The feeling part was the same. The feeling of abandonment is what was really, to put a name on the feeling, it was abandonment that she felt, and that was the same. And you know what? She married him. She would tell me, or tell you, she would tell you that the reason she married him was because he was such a good provider. He would always take care of her. But the real reason she married him is not just for that reason. And I don't say that is not part of it.
Sure.
The other part of it is that she's not done with that abandonment feeling, and she's going to duke it out with him.
Why 7 years? Why is it the 7-year itch? Why aren't these things like in a year or 2 years or 5 years?
Sometimes they are. And the 7-year itch I use as a cliche because...
But you hear about it. I mean, the 7-year itch.
You hear about it.
Part of in culture.
Yes, and that's because usually it takes some time before people are willing to look at how this relationship reminds them of the past.
Okay.
A lot of times at the beginning, we are still sort of love-struck, and we're thinking about all the wonderful things, and we're traveling together, and we're happy, and we're busy with our lives. Sometimes it takes time for this to sort of sink in and play out. And I find that new marriages, they're not playing out in the same way. It takes us time to really sort of get at who we really are, too. And many people believe that if they really show themselves to their partner, they're going to run away. That if they find out who I really is, if he finds out who, what I'm really made of, he's going to go.
Does it happen beyond the 7-year mark too for people, let's say at 14 years or at 21 years? Does it rear its ugly head again, or after 7 years and you're kind of working through the issues, do you tend to settle in and I guess be more comfortable with yourself and with your mate and your issues?
I love that question because, yes, it happens episodically.
It does.
So what happened, and the reason for that is when it starts rearing its ugly head, okay, so the issues of the family of origin start coming up for you. What happens is we are willing to deal with it sometimes in parts. So we may sort of have some conversation about, let's say in her case, the abandonment. She might say, I don't like you traveling so much. I really don't. But she may not get to the point where, because some people don't come to a life coach, so they don't get to it as quicker. So some people, she did because I was in the conversation with her, but sometimes people don't realize it has anything to do with the past, and it takes a long time to realize that, especially when it doesn't look like that on the outside. If it looks different, like in her case, I brought her up as an example because in her case, the outside looked very different than her family of origin. Her father left the family, and he was also an alcoholic, and he was, even when he was still with the family, he was drinking, so the mother felt like he left a long time before he did. These factors were not a part of her marriage, so she had a hard time believing, even from her life coach, that this in fact was an issue from her past. So what happens with people when they start to not get along, that's what they call the 7-year itch. He's bothering me, everything he does bothers me, I married him for breakfast, or I married him for ever, but not for lunch, or what's that expression?
Yeah.
I married
like
him.
that,
I married
the
him
little
for,
things
for
to
good
pick
and
me
the
up.
bad,
Yeah.
but not for lunch.
Yeah.
He's starting to bug me. It's not really that he's starting to bug you. It's that he's starting to bug you because you're more of who you really are. And those involve the issues of the family of origin.
So can we do something to intervene for ourselves if these triggers arise in us and we recognize that, okay, I'm having a trigger moment right now, so that we can help ourselves? What would we do?
So that's the best question of all, because the good news is we can solve this problem. And the way we solve it is this. The number one thing we need to do is to recognize where this is coming from. It's really not about the fact that he's a slob. It's something deeper. It's not about the fact that you both don't eat the same way. It's something much deeper. It's not about even, well, I don't like that you travel. It's much deeper. And so when we can get to, I think I don't like when you travel because my father abandoned our family. When we can get to that, that's only step 2. Step 1 is, I don't like it that this happens in our family or in our marriage. Step 2 is, I feel anxious when you leave. I don't like you leaving all the time. Step 3 is, this reminds me of something. Let's think about what it reminds me of. Where have I felt this way before? Where have I talked about this before? In my family I grew up in. And then we say to each other, okay, I don't like it that you do this. You don't like it that I do that. How can we solve these issues? And sometimes if it's the core issue, people get forlorn, the 7-year itch, because they believe they can't solve it. I guess I married somebody who was going to help me act out these issues. Well, now I'm acting them out. It doesn't feel so good. So did I marry you because you were going to abandon me? Or even if you're not abandoning me, it feels like that. Is that why I married you? How can we solve this? And the final answer is, when you get to the point where you can say, I guess I need to resolve this feeling that I have for myself and not put this on my husband. I want my husband to be my savior. I want him to say, I will never leave you. I will never abandon you. And he can say that. There's nothing wrong with asking your husband to say that. But if never abandoning you means that I can't travel if I'm your husband, that's the part that we need to rethink. And you can only get there by understanding what came before that, all the things we just said. Step 1, 2, 3. We don't even know what we need to do when we think we're arguing about that he leaves his shoes in the hall every day. When we understand what the core issues are, and really and truly, here's the other good part. There's only a couple of core issues. There are only a couple of core issues. We argue about these core issues all the time. It may sound like we're arguing now about how you came home late, and we're arguing another day about how you refused to take care of yourself. But it all stems from the same core issue. And once we realize that, then we can begin to really do the work that it takes. And part of that work is, I am needy in this arena, in this particular way. I do need you to tell me, no matter what happens, I'm never going to leave you, because that's one of my triggers, that's one of my issues. But then the real work gets done when you're able to say, I'm not going to put this on you every day of your life. I'm not going to make the fact that I married you because you'd help me work this out, meaning I have this abandonment feeling from you. I'm not going to put that on you anymore. And that's when we say, this marriage is going to survive. And what happens in between, when you say, what happens after 7 years, 14 years, and that's just, arbitrary. But the reason it keeps coming up again is all of these steps don't take place in one day or 1 year.
We got to do the work.
You got to do the work.
You've got to do the work.
Yeah.
Susan, the 7-year itch, this was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us and for Susan's insight into what we might be able to do to solve the 7-year itch or to deal with it. If you'd like to get in contact with Susan, reach out with a comment or maybe suggest a topic. You can find her at reallife@blueridgepbs.org. Until next time, I'm Rose Martin, and let's live our best lives.